In a quiet village surrounded by thick palms and singing rivers, there lived a man named Okoro, a respected farmer known for his wealth and kindness. His late wife, Adan, had left him one daughter, Nena, a gentle bright-eyed girl whose laughter once filled the compound like morning birdsong. Okoro loved her deeply, but the weight of loneliness grew heavy after his wife's death. The villagers began to whisper, "A man cannot live alone forever." And so, against his daughter's quiet unease, Okoro remarried. Her name was Maji. Beautiful, graceful, with eyes that gleamed like river stones, but her beauty carried something sharp beneath. When she arrived, the whole village came to greet her. She smiled sweetly, bowing to elders, and held Nena's hands, saying, "From today I am your mother." But even then, something cold lingered in her touch. At first, life seemed peaceful. Maji cooked with the servants, tended to the goats, and sat beside Okoro each evening as the fire crackled. But behind her smiles, her heart burned with envy. She saw the way Okoro adored Nena, how he saved the ripest fruits for her, how his face softened when she sang her mother's songs. And worse, she began to hear the whispers, "When Okoro dies, all his land will belong to Nena." That seed of jealousy took root in Maji's soul. One afternoon Okoro fell ill. His strong frame weakened, his voice grew faint, and within weeks he died in his sleep. The whole village mourned, drums beat low, women wailed, and Nena wept until her body trembled. But Maji's tears were few, and her mourning cloth barely hid the spark of satisfaction in her eyes. Now the house, the lands, the cattle, all passed into her care until Nena came of age. When the burial ended, Maji's mask began to slip. She sent the servants away one by one. "There is no need for so many mouths," she said. She stopped feeding Nena well, made her sleep on a mat outside the main hut, and forced her to sweep, fetch water, and cook before sunrise. If Nena cried, she said, "You think you are a princess? Your father is gone. You have only me now." Still, the girl endured, whispering prayers each night beside the small shrine her mother had left her. "Spirits of my mother, keep me safe," she would murmur through her tears. One evening Maji sat alone, gazing into the fire. A greedy thought crawled into her mind. If the girl dies, the inheritance will be mine forever. Her heart raced with dark excitement. The next morning she called Nena. "My daughter," she said with a false smile, "today you will help me in the fields behind the forest. There is yam buried deep in the ground. Bring your hoe." The girl obeyed, unaware of the trap that waited for her among the tall grass and red earth. The sun was bright that morning, the kind that makes the air shimmer like gold, but beneath its beauty, something dark was growing. Nena followed her stepmother along the narrow path through the forest, her bare feet brushing against dry leaves. Birds sang above, unaware of the cruelty that was about to unfold below their branches. Maji walked ahead with a small hoe in her hand, her wrapper tied tightly around her waist. "Come, child," she said sweetly, not turning around. "There is good soil here. Your father planted many yams before he died. We must dig them up before the rains come." "Yes, Mama," Nena replied softly, though her voice carried the faint tremble of fear. She always felt uneasy around her stepmother, as though the woman's shadow stretched too long. When they reached a clearing, Maji pointed to a spot on the ground. "Dig here," she said. "The biggest yams lie deep beneath." Nena knelt and began to dig, her hands working gently through the red earth. Sweat rolled down her face and small insects crawled near her arms. "Mama, the soil is hard," she said, pausing to wipe her brow. "Dig deeper," Maji ordered. Nena obeyed. She kept digging until the hole was wide and deep enough for her entire body. Then she looked up and said softly, "Mama, I see no yam here." Maji's lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You've worked hard, my child. Let me look." She stepped closer, and before Nena could react, Maji pushed her. The girl fell backward into the pit, the breath knocked out of her lungs. "Mama," she screamed, scrambling to climb out. "Why did you?" But the stepmother was already shoveling dirt back into the hole. "Mama, please. Please don't." Nena cried, her voice breaking, her fingers clawing at the walls of the pit. The soil fell heavier and faster, filling the air with choking dust. "Be silent," Maji hissed, her face twisted with greed and fury. "You were never mine. All this land will belong to me now." Nena's cries grew weaker as the earth covered her chest, her neck, her face. The last sound that escaped her lips was a muffled sob, a prayer to her late mother and the ancestors, "Let justice find me wherever I am buried." When it was over, Maji stood still, panting, staring at the mound of earth. A strange silence filled the forest, no wind, no bird song. Even the trees seemed to watch. She spat on the soil and whispered, "Now it is done." She gathered her things and returned to the village, humming softly as though nothing had happened. That night, she told the neighbors, "Nena has gone to visit her mother's people in the next village. She will be gone for some time." No one doubted her. But far beneath the earth, Nena's spirit did not rest. Her blood mingled with the roots of the yam vines, her breath with the soil. The land itself began to stir, a soft vibration, a whisper that crept through the roots and streams. Innocence does not die in silence. That night, the wind rose for the first time in many months. It howled through the trees, rattling Maji's hut. Her fire went out on its own. She tried to relight it, but the flame refused to catch. Then she heard it, faint but unmistakable, a child's voice carried by the wind. "Mama, why did you bury me?" Maji froze, her heart thundering. She looked around the dark hut, eyes wide. "No, no, it's the wind," she whispered, clutching her chest. But the whisper came again, closer this time, colder. The next morning, villagers found her pacing outside her hut, eyes red from sleeplessness. She told them nothing. But deep in the forest, the mound where Nena was buried began to crack. From beneath it, tiny green shoots began to sprout, strange vines, glistening as though wet with tears. And the earth, still freshly turned, trembled softly, as if breathing. 3 nights had passed since Maji buried Nena alive. The village seemed ordinary. Roosters crowed, smoke rose from cooking fires, children chased each other through the dust. But in Maji's compound, peace had become a stranger. Each night, she would wake to the same sound, a faint scratching beneath the ground. Sometimes it was like fingernails scraping wood. Other times, it was like a child softly calling her name. "Maji. Mama." She would sit upright on her bamboo mat, trembling, clutching her wrapper tightly around her chest. Sweat soaked her back though the night air was cool. "Go away," she'd shout into the dark. "You are dead. Dead." But the more she shouted, the clearer the whispers became. By the 4th night, she dared not sleep. She sat by her fire, eyes red, lips moving in constant muttering. "It's the guilt," she told herself. "It's just guilt." But even guilt does not make the ground move. Because far beneath the soil, Nena's spirit was not gone. Her last breath had soaked into the red earth, and her tears had mixed with the roots. The ancestors had heard her final prayer, and they had decided that her story was not yet finished. Where her body lay, a vine had grown. It was no ordinary vine. Its stems were green and gold, pulsing faintly as if with life. Every night, it grew higher, crawling toward the surface inch by inch. And with it, the whispers grew louder. By morning, the villagers began to notice strange things. A sweet smell hung over the forest, like flowers and rain. The soil near the yam field seemed to hum. One farmer swore he saw the ground move like a sleeping chest rising and falling. But when they told Maji, she snapped at them. "Nonsense. You people and your superstitions." She refused to go near the forest again, but her chickens stopped laying eggs, her goats refused to eat, and every night the wind carried Nena's voice to her ears. One evening her son, a young boy named Ikenna, came running into the compound, eyes wide. "Mama, Mama, come and see." "What is it, child?" she barked, annoyed. "There's a vine growing in the middle of the path. It wasn't there yesterday. It shines like gold." Maji's heart dropped. She slapped the boy across the face. "Don't ever speak of that vine again, you hear me?" But that night, the vine glowed brighter, stretching like a snake toward her hut. She heard rustling outside, then soft footsteps, bare feet dragging slowly across the sand. She rose, holding a small oil lamp, her hands shaking. "Who's there?" No answer. Only the flicker of leaves outside her doorway. Then she heard it, a soft voice, calm but sorrowful. "Why, Mama? I loved you." The lamp slipped from her hand and shattered. Darkness swallowed her. She screamed and ran inside, covering her ears. "Leave me alone. You are dead. Stay buried." But the whisper turned into a song, low, haunting, and full of pain. The kind of song that only spirits sing when justice begins to wake. Meanwhile, the villagers began to talk. "Something is wrong," the elders said. "The earth near the yam field stirs too often. It is as if the dead are breathing." A few of them went to the forest the next morning. What they saw chilled them to their bones. The mound of earth had split open, and from it grew a tall vine, its leaves wide and shining, and at the top, a single white flower that seemed to glow. Around it, butterflies hovered though there were no other blooms nearby. "Who was buried here?" one elder asked softly. No one knew, or so they claimed. But the moment they stepped closer, A strange sound rose from beneath the ground, like a deep sigh. The earth trembled. The men fled. Back in the village they told the chief, who sent word for a diviner, an old woman known to speak with spirits. When she arrived, she stood by the vine for a long time, listening. Then she whispered, "The earth speaks of injustice. A child's cry is trapped beneath. Whoever did this, their days are numbered." That night, thunder rolled across a clear sky. No rain fell, but lightning flashed again and again, striking near Maji's hut. She cowered in the corner, shaking, muttering prayers she had long forgotten. "Mama," the voice came again, this time from under her floor. "You buried me in silence, but the earth remembers everything." Maji screamed until her voice broke. But no one came to help, for even the villagers now feared her compound, where strange lights flickered at night and the smell of earth never faded. By the fifth night, the village could no longer pretend nothing was wrong. The air itself felt heavy, like rain that refused to fall. Dogs howled at nothing, roosters crowed at midnight, and even the river ran slower, as if listening. The vine that had grown from Nena's grave now stretched all the way to the edge of Maji's compound. Its leaves shimmered under the moonlight, whispering softly like voices in a secret meeting. Children were forbidden to go near it, but they still peeked from behind trees, whispering, "That's where the spirit lives." Maji, once proud and loud, had become a ghost of herself. Her eyes were sunken, her wrapper dirty, her once-oiled hair now wild. She could not sleep, for every time she closed her eyes she saw Nena, her stepdaughter, her victim, staring back from the dark soil, her face pale but calm. "Stop haunting me," she shouted into the emptiness one evening, clutching a gourd of palm wine. "I gave you everything. You were the one who wanted more." But even she didn't believe her own words. That night something changed. The sky was clear, filled with stars, but the wind had gone still. Not even a leaf moved. The world seemed to hold its breath. Inside her hut, Maji sat trembling near the fire. Ikena, her son, slept beside her, innocent and unaware. Then came a sound, a single knock on the door. "Knock. Knock." She froze. "Mama," a voice whispered from outside, soft as wind through grass. "It's cold out here. Won't you let me in?" Maji's breath caught in her throat. She knew that voice. It was the same voice she had silenced with soil and stone. Her fingers trembled as she grabbed her son and held him close. "Go away," she whispered, tears running down her face. "You're not real. You're gone." But the voice came again. "If I am gone, Mama, then who is knocking?" The door creaked. Slowly the latch began to move, not by hand, but as if the wood itself obeyed the spirit outside. The air grew cold. The fire dimmed. And then Nena stepped in. Not as flesh, not as ghost, but something in between. Her dress was the same one she had worn the night she was buried, torn and stained, but her skin glowed faintly, her eyes calm and filled with sorrow. She looked not like death but like truth itself. Maji stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the mat. No, I buried you. I made sure." "Yes," Nena said quietly. "You buried me. You buried love and kindness and the blood that called you mother. But the earth never forgets the cries of the innocent." Ikena woke and gasped, clutching his mother's wrapper. "Mama, who is that?" Maji could not answer. She fell to her knees, shaking. Please forgive me. I was blinded by greed. I feared she would take everything." Nena's voice was soft, almost gentle. "You took everything, yet you gained nothing. Look at you, Mama, even the fire runs from your hands." And truly the flames in the hut flickered low, crawling away from Maji's trembling fingers. Outside, the wind began to rise, carrying the smell of wet soil and flowers. The vine outside the hut glowed brighter, its golden veins pulsing like a heartbeat. Then, as if the earth exhaled, a low rumble shook the ground. The villagers, awakened by the noise, rushed out of their huts. "What is happening?" they cried. But when they reached Maji's compound, they stopped short. Through the doorway they could see the faint glow of Nena's figure, radiant, peaceful, untouchable. And there, on the floor, Maji knelt in the dust, wailing like a wounded animal. "I am sorry. Please, my child, spare me." Nena turned toward the villagers, her eyes soft but powerful. "Let no one forget. The wicked may hide their hands in the soil, but the earth will return what it was forced to swallow." Then slowly she began to fade, her form dissolving into light, merging with the golden vine that had birthed her. The hut trembled one last time and then silence. When dawn came, the villagers found Maji collapsed on the floor, her hair white as ash. She was alive, but broken. Her son sat beside her, silent, clutching the vine that had crept through the doorway during the night. From that day on, Maji never spoke again. She lived like a shadow, haunted not by Nena's ghost, but by her own heart. And in the center of her compound, where the vine had once glowed, a single white flower bloomed each morning. The villagers called it the child's breath. They said it carried the voice of Nena, not crying, not angry, just singing softly like forgiveness carried on the wind. The morning after the haunting, Maji woke to a world that no longer felt like hers. The once bustling courtyard was empty. Chickens no longer clucked, goats refused to enter her compound, and even the trees near her hut seemed to bend away, their leaves whispering in low, disapproving tones. She sat alone by the ashes of her fire, eyes vacant. The villagers avoided her gaze. Where once her words carried power, now people crossed the road when she passed. Children pointed and whispered, "That is the woman who angered the earth." Ikena, her son, stayed close but distant, a shadow of the cheerful boy he had been. He no longer laughed. At night, he often woke up screaming, saying he heard footsteps near the river, calling his name in a soft, familiar voice. "Mama, she calls me," he whispered one night, trembling under his raffia mat. "She says she wants to show me something." Maji clutched him tight, her nails digging into his shoulders. "You must not go. Do you hear me? You must not answer her." But fear lived in her heart like a disease. Every creak, every gust of wind, every rustle in the grass sounded like Nena's breath. One evening, desperate for peace, Maji went to the village priest. He was an old man with eyes clouded like storm water, known for speaking truth whether it soothed or scarred. "Forgive me, elder," Maji said, falling to her knees before him. "I wronged my husband's daughter. I buried her alive, but she returned. The earth itself has turned against me." The priest's eyes narrowed. "You do not need forgiveness from me. You need it from her. She is gone." Maji cried. "Her body is buried, her spirit walks the night." The priest shook his head. "Then go to the place where you buried her. Speak her name. If the earth truly took her, the earth will hear your cry." That night, under the pale blue moon, Maji walked alone to the old burial ground behind her farm. The air was still. The vine that had grown from the grave now shimmered faintly, its leaves trembling as she approached. She knelt before it, her knees sinking into the damp soil. "Nena," she whispered, "I have come to beg." No answer. Only the sound of her own breath. Tears spilled down her face as she pressed her hands into the ground. "I was jealous. I was cruel. But I was also weak. I feared you would take what was meant for my son. I see now, what I took from you was not gold or land but peace. And now that peace has cursed me." The wind rose suddenly, circling her. The leaves rustled with a whisper, like a sigh. Then from beneath the earth came a faint glow, not threatening but gentle, warm. Maji gasped, covering her mouth. She could see shapes forming in the light, a hand, small and familiar, reaching toward her. Her heart broke. She reached out, 2 fingers trembling. "My child," she whispered. "Forgive me." For a moment, her hand passed through the light, and warmth flooded her body, spreading through her chest, her arms, her face. She felt Nena's voice, soft and distant. "You are not cursed, Mama. You are only broken. The earth remembers pain, but it also remembers mercy." Then the light faded and the night went still. Maji fell forward, sobbing into the soil. "I will never forget," she whispered. "I will feed the poor, care for the widows, tend the land you loved. Maybe then the earth will forgive me too." When she returned to the village at dawn, people watched silently. Something about her had changed. Her face, though aged and tired, seemed calm. Her voice no longer carried the sharpness of pride, but the weight of truth. She began visiting the river daily, leaving offerings of food for the hungry and flowers for the dead. She rebuilt the grave with her own hands, placing stones around it so no one would step there again. Over time, the villagers softened. They began to greet her, cautiously at first, then with quiet respect. But Maji never laughed again. Her joy had been traded for peace, and she wore it like an old wrapper, faded but strong. And the vine that had once carried whispers now bore fruit, small golden pods that glowed at dusk. People said they tasted of sweetness and salt, like tears turned to honey. They called it Nena's mercy. Children played near the vine without fear now, and sometimes, when the wind passed through its leaves, it sounded like a soft lullaby, the kind a mother sings when she has finally learned the price of her love. Time passed, but the whispers never fully faded. The story of what Maji had done, and how the earth itself had answered, spread from her small village to neighboring ones. Traders told it in the markets, mothers whispered it to their children at night. Do not let jealousy rot your soul, they said, for the earth listens and it never forgets. But in Maji's own village, life had changed in quiet, uneasy ways. The people who once feared her pride now watched her with a strange mix of pity and reverence. She had become something else, neither a villain nor a victim but a warning. Every morning Maji walked to the river carrying baskets of fruit and grain. She would kneel at the bank, her reflection wavering on the water's surface. Take this, Nena, she whispered each time. Feed the hungry spirits who wander still. Children would sometimes follow her from afar, hiding behind palm trees, watching as she laid the offerings gently into the water. They said the river shimmered brighter after she left, as though the spirit beneath it had smiled. One afternoon, while Maji worked in her small garden, a group of women approached her. Their faces were tense, uncertain. The eldest among them, Mama Obi, spoke first. Maji, she said carefully, we have seen what the land has done. Your crops grow well again. The rains have returned. Perhaps it is time you joined the Women's Council again. Maji looked up, surprised. You would have me sit among you after all I've done? Mama Obi nodded slowly. The earth punished you, yes. But it also spared you. That means something. For a long moment Maji said nothing. Then she rose to her feet, wiping soil from her hands. If I sit with you, she said softly, it will not be as a leader but as a servant. Let me tend to the widows and the orphans. Let me use my hands for mending, not taking. The women nodded. Some smiled faintly, others still avoided her eyes. But they helped her gather her harvest, and for the first time in many years, laughter returned to Maji's compound, faint, hesitant, but real. That evening, as she sat alone by her fire, Ikena came to her. The boy had grown taller, stronger. His eyes, once clouded with fear, now held quiet wisdom. Mother, he said, sitting beside her, people have stopped calling me the son of a witch. She looked at him, a small smile touching her lips. And what do they call you now? He grinned shyly. They call me the keeper of the river. Her breath caught. Why? Because I tend to Nena's vine, he said. I clean the ground around it, water it every morning. The fruit it gives, people eat it and feel peace. Some say it heals sadness. Tears welled in Maji's eyes, though her smile deepened. She chose well, she whispered. That night, the village gathered near the riverbank to celebrate the first full moon of the harvest. Fires burned bright, drums echoed through the trees, and people danced barefoot on the cool earth. For the first time in many years Maji joined them. She moved slowly, gracefully, her steps more prayer than dance. Then as the moon rose high, a sudden hush fell over the crowd. The river shimmered faintly as though reflecting more than light. From the vine, a few golden pods dropped into the water, glowing softly before floating downstream. Mama Obi whispered, "It is her spirit, she blesses us again." The villagers bowed their heads, murmuring prayers. And Maji, standing by the river, felt something lift from her chest, the last shadow of guilt carried away by the current. Later that night, when the fires dimmed and the people returned to their homes, she sat alone at the river's edge. The moonlight fell across her face and she whispered into the silence, "You are remembered, child. You are loved." The wind stirred gently, rustling the vine leaves, and for a heartbeat she heard a soft, familiar laugh, light as the ripple of water. When she looked again, the river was still. But her reflection smiled back at her, calm, unburdened, whole. From that night onward, Maji's home became a place of counsel and comfort. Widows came for food, mothers for advice, children for stories. She never raised her voice, never spoke with pride again. Her words carried the quiet weight of one who had walked through the dark and returned with light. And though the villagers never forgot what she had done, they began to tell her story differently. No longer as a tale of evil but as a story of awakening, of how the earth, in its wisdom, broke a cruel heart only to make it kind again. Seasons passed and peace began to return to the land. The rains came when they were needed, and the earth yielded more than anyone remembered in years. The villagers said the river had been appeased, that the spirit of the girl buried in its soil now watched over them with kindness. Each morning mist rose from the river, silver and soft, curling over the water like a living thing. Maji would come early, her wrapper tied neatly, a basket balanced on her head. She always brought fresh bread, flowers, and water from her calabash. She would set them beside the vines and whisper, "You were wronged, my child, but you have become our blessing." One day as she knelt by the vine, she heard footsteps behind her. It was the chief's wife, Mama Nkechi, a proud woman rarely seen near the river. "Maji," she said, her tone neither cruel nor kind. The council asks for your help. The drought in the northern farms has returned, and people say only your prayers reach the river's heart. Maji hesitated, startled. Me? Asked the river. Mama Nkechi nodded. Yes. The vine listens to you. You are the one it spared. For a long moment, Maji stared at the shimmering water, her heart heavy with awe and fear. I am not a priestess, she said. I am a woman who sinned. Then perhaps that is why it listens, Mama Nkechi replied quietly. That night, under a full moon, the villagers gathered at the river. They lit torches and brought offerings, calabashes of oil, baskets of fruit, carved wooden bowls of palm wine. Drums beat slowly, like the rhythm of the earth's own heart. Maji stood before the vine, trembling, her shadow long in the moonlight. She raised her hands. O river that carries both sorrow and peace, forgive our greed and forgetfulness. Give us water again that no mother may bury her child in dust. The crowd fell silent. Even the crickets seemed to stop singing. For a heartbeat, nothing moved. Then a cool wind swept across the river, rippling the surface. The vine swayed gently as though bowing. And suddenly the first drops of rain began to fall, soft, hesitant, then stronger, until the people cried out in joy. Rain. Rain from the river spirit. They laughed, they danced, they lifted their hands to the sky. Maji stood still, her tears mingling with the rain. It was as if Nena's spirit had answered her, not with vengeance but with mercy. The rain fell through the night, washing away the last traces of drought. The fields filled with promise once more. In the days that followed, the people brought gifts to Maji's home, yams, palm oil, new wrappers, but she accepted nothing. I did not call the rain, she told them softly. It was her. It was always her. The children began to sing new songs at the river. Their small voices carried through the air like wind chimes. Buried beneath the red. She sleeps yet she sees. Her hands are roots. Her tears are seeds. Each verse told the story of how goodness endures, how the innocent rise in ways unseen. The old women would hum along, swaying as they worked, saying, "The river remembers." One afternoon, as Maji tended to her small garden, a stranger arrived, a young woman from a faraway village. Her clothes were torn, her eyes hollow with grief. "Please," she said, falling to her knees, "they said you understand suffering. My husband has cast me out. I have nowhere to go." Maji lifted her gently. "Then you will stay here," she said. "The river does not turn away those who weep." She gave the girl food, water, and a mat to sleep on. As the nights passed, more people came, widows, orphans, women running from cruelty. Her small home became a refuge, a place where broken spirits found rest. People began to call her Mama of the River, the woman who turned sorrow into shelter. And sometimes, late at night, when the moon hung low and silver over the water, she would see the faint outline of a girl's shadow dancing in the ripples, small, bright, and free. Maji would smile, whispering, "Dance, my child. The earth forgave me and so have you." The river glowed faintly as though nodding in agreement. The village had changed, not only in harvest but in heart. Where there had once been gossip and greed, there was now gentleness. People helped one another, shared food, and spoke with respect. But inside Maji's chest, a truth still burned quietly. Though she had built a life of peace and compassion, her nights were haunted by the same dream, Nena's face, eyes wide and kind, whispering, "Tell them, Mama, tell them everything." For years, Maji had kept the darkest part of the story buried, how greed and jealousy had led her to take Nena to the forest that day. The people believed Nena had died by accident. No one knew she had been betrayed by her own stepmother. But guilt is a seed that always grows. One morning, as the sun climbed above the horizon, Maji wrapped her shawl around her shoulders and walked to the village square. Her cane struck the ground softly, rhythmically, as though marking the beat of her resolve. The villagers greeted her with smiles, bowing slightly. She had become almost sacred to them. She nodded in return but did not smile. "Call everyone," she said to the young drummers by the gate. "The river has a truth to tell today." By midday the square was full. Old and young gathered, murmuring with curiosity. Even the chief and his wife came, standing at the front. The air was thick with the scent of palm oil and dust. Maji stood before them, her back straight despite her years, her eyes gleaming like wet stones. "My people," she began, her voice trembling but strong, "you call me Mama of the River and you say I brought blessings. But I must tell you, I do not deserve your praise." A hush fell. Someone whispered, "What does she mean?" Maji's hands shook as she untied the small pouch around her neck. Inside was a piece of the old vine, dry and twisted. She held it up. This vine grew from a grave I made with my own hands. The girl who rests beneath it was Nena, my husband's daughter, innocent and gentle. I was the one who led her to the forest that day. I thought she stood between me and wealth that was never mine. I pushed her into the earth and the soil swallowed her cries. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some stepped back in disbelief, others covered their mouths in horror. The chief's wife clutched her wrapper. Tears rolled down Maji's wrinkled face. Yes, she said, I buried her alive. But the earth did not forget. The river rose in anger. Every pain we suffered was born from my hands. The silence was thick and suffocating. Even the birds seemed to have gone still. Finally an old man, the village elder, stepped forward. His eyes were heavy with sadness. Why confess now, Mama, when you could have kept your peace? Because peace built on lies is rot beneath the floor, she said. Every time the rain fell, I felt her forgiveness. But forgiveness means nothing if the truth remains hidden. She sank to her knees, her voice breaking. I am ready to face your judgment. The people murmured. Some wept, others turned away. Yet among them a young girl stepped out, one of the orphans Maji had sheltered. Her name was Chica. She ran forward, knelt beside Maji and held her tightly. No, Chica cried. You are not the same woman who buried her. The river changed you. The girl forgave you, we all saw it in the rain. The elder looked at the crowd. What do you say, my people? Shall we condemn her? Voices rose, uncertain, emotional, divided. Then an unexpected wind swept through the square, carrying the scent of wet earth and river water. The people looked up, the sky was perfectly clear, yet the wind smelled of rain. Someone whispered, it's her, the spirit of the girl. The elder closed his eyes. Then the river has spoken. He turned to Maji. Your punishment is to live, to keep tending the river, to keep teaching us what forgiveness means. Let no one here forget what greed can do, nor how mercy can heal. Maji bowed her head, weeping silently. Thank you, she whispered. That night she returned to the river. The moonlight shimmered across the surface, and for the first time she felt no weight on her chest. The vine by the water had bloomed, tiny white flowers glowing softly like stars. She reached out and touched them, whispering, I told them, my child. I told them the truth. A faint breeze rustled through the leaves, almost like a sigh, or perhaps a blessing. Maji closed her eyes, smiling through tears. The river murmured, the village slept, and the night carried the peace of both confession and forgiveness. Years passed like gentle ripples across the river's face. Maji's confession had changed everything, not only her life but the heart of the entire village. The people no longer spoke of her as the evil stepmother, or even the woman of the river. They spoke of her as the woman who turned darkness into light, who showed them that forgiveness could bloom even from a grave. Children grew up hearing her story not as a warning but as a lesson. Mothers told their daughters, do not let envy guide your hands, let love guide your heart. Farmers poured libations by the riverbank before planting, whispering prayers to both Nena and Maji, two souls now spoken of as one. In her old age, Maji still walked the same path each morning, the path that led to the river where it had all begun. Her steps were slow now but steady. Her eyes, though dimmed by time, carried a strange brightness, as though she could still see what others could not. On one such morning the sky was clear, the light soft and pure. She carried a small basket of white petals, gathered from the vines that grew where Nena's grave once lay. She knelt by the water, her hands trembling, and scattered the petals on the surface. The river accepted them gently, swirling them away. She smiled faintly. You see, my child, she whispered, the world remembers you in every drop of rain, in every kindness they share. I thought I buried you, but you became everything that grows. The water glimmered as if answering. Behind her, Chica approached, now a young woman, graceful and wise. She had taken Maji's place as a caretaker of the river, the bridge between the living and the departed. Mama, she said softly, the chief sent for you. He says it is time for the planting ritual. They want your blessing. Maji turned, her face calm. My time for blessings is ending, my child. Yours has begun. Chica frowned. Don't say that. Maji smiled, a peaceful sadness in her eyes. All rivers must return to the sea. I've given all that I can. Now the river must flow through you. That night the air was unusually still. The moon hung low and golden, its reflection dancing on the river like liquid fire. The villagers sang softly in the distance, their drums low and mournful. Maji sat by her door watching the stars. She remembered everything, The day she had sinned, the years she had atoned, the forgiveness she had been given. And she realized something she had never understood before. Forgiveness does not erase what we did, it transforms what we were. As the night deepened, she heard the river calling, not with fear but with tenderness. The sound of flowing water grew louder in her ears, like a heartbeat. She rose, leaning on her cane, and walked toward it one last time. When the villagers found her the next morning, she was seated by the water, her shawl draped around her shoulders, her eyes closed, her face serene. Around her feet, the white vine had grown wild, curling into the shape of a circle, a symbol of completion. The river glistened brighter than ever, and tiny petals floated gently on its surface. The chief ordered that she be buried beside Nena, under the same tree where their story had begun. The two graves were covered in white flowers, and the villagers sang through their tears. She was the hand that buried, yet also the hand that healed. She was the storm that took, yet also the rain that gave. From that day forward, no one spoke of the curse of the river. They spoke of its mercy. And each year, during the festival of renewal, women and children came to the riverbank dressed in bright colors, reds, blues, yellows, to celebrate the story of Maji and Nena. They poured water on the soil, planting new seeds, saying, "For every wrong done in darkness, let light grow twice as strong." The river became a sacred place, not of fear but of forgiveness. Traders, travelers, even strangers from faraway lands came to see it. Some said when the wind passed over the water, they could hear two voices laughing softly together. One young, one old, like a mother and daughter reunited. And in that laughter, the village always found its peace again.